Hey, fellow soldiers, let's sharpen our swords together as we dive deep in the scriptures. My name is Jennifer Wilson Presley, and I am so glad that you are here today. We are going to be looking at Esther chapter 4, verses 15 through 17. Esther chapter 4, verses 15 through 17. We're going to be looking at a story of Queen Esther. Esther is written about in the book that bears her name, and this is found in the Old Testament. And she was not always a queen. She was not always a member of the royal family. In fact, during this part in her life, these verses in 15 through 17, she is actually facing a part of her life in which she has got a monumental task, and she doesn't know how to proceed. You know, aren't we faced with those in our lives every day? You know, if it's not a monumental task, just a simple task, and we don't know how to proceed. And Esther turns to God for his direction and how to proceed. Esther was not always a queen. She was actually an orphan. She lost both her mom and her dad when she was younger. And she was raised by her cousin Mordecai. And Esther and Mordecai had a very close relationship. Esther really valued Mordecai's guidance, Mordecai's advice. You can see that a lot in the book of Esther when you're reading the account of her life. And so, how did she get to be queen? You know, it was an absolute miracle that she became a member of the royal family. During this time, the Israelites were being controlled by the Persians, and the Persian king was King Ahasuerus, and his wife was Queen Vashti. And Queen Vashti had been banned from the kingdom, and they were looking for someone to fill her spot, you know, looking for the next queen. And so out of all of the women, Esther was selected as his new queen. You know, God created Esther with beauty. And, you know, she knew that. She grew up, she probably heard that a lot growing up, you know, Esther, you're so beautiful. And, you know, when the king Ahasuerus saw her, you know, he immediately selected her to be his queen. And when she is selected to be a member of the royal family, that really changed the course of her life. You know, her life was changed, and she was having to learn how to navigate it. You know, she was having servants all around her, and the finest of things all around her, and, you know, and she was having to learn how to navigate it. Also, more importantly, though, it really changed her communication with Mordecai. You know, Mordecai, her and Mordecai are close. You know, growing up, their communication was one-on-one, face-to-face. And now she's a member of the royal family, and their communication is not one-on-one. You know, she's a member of the royal family, and so she's having to send her handmaid or a messenger to go relay a message to Mordecai. And so that's how she communicates to Mordecai. And I'm sure that was a transition for her and him to get used to. And through this communication, she actually finds out, you know, her handmaid comes back with a message that Mordecai said that there's this law that's been passed that they are killing our people. They're killing the Jewish people. And Esther was completely devastated by this news. You know, her people were being killed left and right. The king Ahasuerus did not know that Esther was a Jew, was an Israelite. And she knew that she needed to defend her people, but she didn't know how. And so this is what she does. She sends the handmaid back to Mordecai with this message. Mordecai, I want you and your people to pray and fast for me for 3 days. And I am going to do the same. I'm going to pray and fast for 3 days. And so they do that. And it really shows the seriousness and, just carving out time of her day to try to seek direction from God. She doesn't go to Mordecai and say, how do you think I need to proceed? She goes to God to seek direction. Back during the Bible times, they didn't have a Bible, right? So their communication was prayer and fasting. They prayed to God, fasted to God, and then they heard back from God. Which is now, we pray to God. That's our communication to Him. But He communicates back to us through His Word, through the Bible. And so she is really, praying for miracles to happen, praying for how to proceed, She's got 2 major hurdles to cross. She's got to cross the hurdle that the king has got to initiate communication with her. There's a law in which the queen just can't go up and talk to the king anytime she wants. She has to wait for him to initiate communication. And that is by way of him extending his scepter out to her. And she had not communicated to him in 30 days. And so this was like a monumental task. Like, it's got to be a miracle for this to happen, for him to even initiate communication. The other thing is that she had to communicate to him that his right-hand man, Haman, was not who he says he was. That was the other major hurdle that she had to cross, because Haman was behind this law of having her people, the Jewish people, executed. So those were the 2 major hurdles for her to cross. And she doesn't just throw up her hands and call it quits and say it's impossible. She is going to pray and seek direction and how to move. Pray for miracles to happen, and also how to move in the situation. So what happens after these 3 days of prayer and fasting? Well, the first thing I see is that when she goes out into outer court where King Ahasuerus is, she gets dressed up. She gets glammed up. She knows she's pretty, and so she is going to glam herself up and hopefully, think that he's going to, recognize me, and just maybe he'll extend that golden scepter out to me. Just maybe. So she goes out there, and it does work. He's actually extends his golden scepter out to her, and I'm sure she's thinking to herself, I cannot believe this. This is an absolute miracle. And, and her response is, I'm going to throw you a banquet only for you and Haman. So they do. She throws them a banquet. It's only for King Ahasuerus and Haman. And the king is like, anything you want, I will grant you. And then she said, I want to throw y'all another banquet tomorrow. And what else does she say in this banquet? What else goes on in this banquet? All we can get from what went on is what happened that night in Esther's life, in Haman's life, in King Ahasuerus' life. Now, we're not really given any information about how it was like, with Esther when she went back home. But we are given an account in what happens with Haman. Haman gets home and he is excited. He is like telling his wife, you will not believe, the queen threw me a banquet and everything. And then he's recalling the promotion that he received 5 years ago. Okay? And the king, we get an account of what happened with him that night. He asked his servants to pull out the book of the records of the Chronicles, to pull it out, and he is trying to recall an incident that happened 5 years ago. There are 2 men that were high up in his court who were plotting to assassinate him. And the man who went to him, who found out about the plot and went to the king, was Mordecai. And that was in the book of the records of Chronicles. So he was wanting to look that up. Who actually was faithful to me, loyal to me, and revealed that assassination plot. So I'm thinking something in that banquet, she must have said something to really recount an event that happened 5 years ago. Now, she knew that Mordecai and Haman did not like each other. Mordecai didn't like Haman because Haman was not the person that he portrayed himself to be. And Haman didn't like Mordecai because Mordecai would never, bow down to him and give him reverence. And so Esther knew that. So she must have said something. She said something to bring that plot assassination up and to bring up Haman's promotion up that happened 5 years ago. Because you can see it, how it's manifested in both King Ahasuerus' evening after the banquet and Haman's evening after the banquet. So at this banquet, Esther is recalling an event that happened 5 years ago because she is wanting to show King Ahasuerus how valuable the Jewish people are to him, how loyal they are to him. And what better way to show that than an example of Mordecai, who saved his life. Mordecai, her cousin, a Jew, who saved King Ahasuerus' life, who revealed to him this plot, this assassination plot that was going to happen 5 years ago. And she also brought up this event too because this was the same time Haman was being promoted. So she was also, allowing Haman, to feel very good about what had happened to him. After this banquet happens, and King Ahasuerus finds out from the book of the records of the Chronicles that Mordecai is behind this assassination plot, revealing him who these 2 guys were who were about to assassinate him. He rewards Mordecai, and he rewards him openly. He allows Mordecai to be paraded in the streets on his own horse, wearing his crown, wearing his robes. And people were, giving him reverence. And I can only imagine when Esther was looking out her window and seeing this. Like, wow, here the king is recognizing one of my people, who's loyal to him. And so the next day, she throws that second banquet for King Ahasuerus and Haman. And this is when she reveals to him who was behind that law of killing her people, the Jewish people, Haman. The king is very angry at Haman. In fact, he is being exposed to betrayal for the first time. And he has him killed. He has the law stopped to where there's no more Jews being executed. And later on, he rewards Mordecai. In fact, Mordecai is second in command to King Ahasuerus. He becomes King Ahasuerus' right-hand man. One who is loyal, one who respects him and reverences him. this is such a powerful story of a young lady who was tasked with such a monumental task of saving her people, the Jewish people. And she turns to God. She turns to God for praying for miracles to happen. She turns to God in guidance, how to direct her. You know, God wants us to turn to Him in the small matters of life, even in the big matters of life, and everything in between. He wants to guide us in our lives. That is my spiritual food for you to munch on the rest of this week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I can't wait to see you next week.